when you start skipping meals or forgetting to drink or just not feeling hungry or thirsty, that is often a sign that your system, for whatever reason, it's trying to deal with whatever crisis it perceives as like right in front of you or on the horizon, instead of just tending to the boring daily things that you have to do to get yourself through the day. So when you notice those signs, that is really a warning. I think a lot of us are not alert to those earlier warning signs until it's kind of too late and we get into a full-fledged bout of depression, full-fledged burnout, and that is just really, really dangerous territory.
That's Elizabeth Svoboda. She's an award-winning science writer who focuses on the science of motivation and thriving. She's also the author of The Art of Pacing, a guide to balancing short-term demands with long-term thriving. So learn 1, the subtle warning signs you're overpacing. 2, how to structure your day for maximum energy. And 3, how to streamline your day with selective mediocrity. And if you want a quick summary write-up of the actionable wisdom that Elizabeth shares, I recommend you sign up for the free Gold Nugget email newsletter, which you can find at awesomeatyourjob.com. I'm Pete Bacchitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Elizabeth. Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you so much, Pete. It's great to be here.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to be chatting about The Art of Pacing. And congratulations. Release day is here now, the day of our recording. I bet that feels good.
Yes, it's surreal, but it feels great. I'm kind of riding the wave here and hoping it lasts. Yeah.
Super. Well, so tell us, could you share, for starters, a super surprising or particularly fascinating discovery you've made about pacing as you were doing your research and putting this all together here?
So the genesis of this book was I started having some interesting conversations with like high-level coaches, Olympic athletes. And the thing that surprised me the most at first was, well, number one, just how seriously they took the business of pacing, which meant taking much more rest and much longer periods of recovery than most of us actually allow ourselves on a day-to-day basis. Like, we all kind of have this stereotype in our heads of like the Olympic athlete who's toiling from the break of dawn until the sun goes down, but it is just not reality at all. And so having these discussions, I started to think, what if we could all start to pace ourselves as thoughtfully, as deliberately as these athletes who, again, are amazing or doing world level things? And what would that produce for us in our lives? And I think that initial element of surprise was really what helped propel the entire book forward.
Yeah, that is striking to think about in an athletic context. And you could see it elsewhere. I'm thinking, I was a podcast, I think it was Father Mike Schmitz. He's a priest, and he was telling a story about, hey, even if you're saving the world, like let's take a look at some nuns who are actually like saving the world. You know, they're right up in there in the midst of poverty and like doing the goodest of things, right? You could imagine. And their order of life, it's locked in there. Rest, prayer, dinner.
Totally. And especially in the context of service or somebody like a nun, somebody who is really devoted to that, you have to be like healthily selfish in a way. Like just like they say on the airplane, you got to put on your own oxygen mask before you serve others. And when you see these nuns with these schedules that they take their rest time, maybe they take their naps, 45 minutes every single afternoon, that is them tending to what they need before they tend to other people. And I think from the outside, we kind of see it as the other way around. Like they're doing all these amazing, unselfish things. But the fact is, in order to be able to do those unselfish things over a sustained period of time, they've got to keep pouring into themselves. And I think I knew that intellectually before I started writing this book, but the research really does support that. And so I believe it even more strongly now.
In a totally different context, I'm thinking about parenting and how that can be so often brutally exhausting.
Oh, man.
In that, like, if there's not thoughtful, planful moments, it's like these precious little ones will, take every minute. There is.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, like my kids are a little older now. They're 10 and 13, but I was very overwhelmed, like especially when they were at that toddler stage, like when one was 18 months, the other was like 4, and I was just going crazy at times. And so one of my sort of impromptu pacing strategies that I devised at that time was, and I worked this out with my husband, but I was like, I need to take like a 24-hour retreat. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a hotel. I'm going to check in like early afternoon one day, and I am going to do 2 things. I'm just going to sleep, and then I'm also going to work on like the writing passion projects that I haven't had time for, that I've really been wanting to dive into and haven't. And so for that entire 24-hour period, that's exactly what I did. Like I alternated between the writing and the resting, or just conking out. And at the end of that, I was shocked how much of a difference it made for me, especially after being immersed in like kid world, kid universe constantly. I just felt so refreshed and so restored. And honestly, I've been doing a few of these every year ever since.
Oh, that's fantastic. I recall a good friend and listener of the show, Lisa. They said, what do you want for your birthday? And she said, I want 24 hours completely by myself. And she did. She got a hotel, and it was everything she hoped it would be. So, well, those are cool perspectives. I think we can resonate naturally with the notion of, yeah, sometimes you feel overworked and tired and stressed, and rest is really great. So I think it might be easy to overlook it or overlook the importance of it. Could you share with us a story of someone who figured out this pacing thing and kind of what the before versus after picture looked like for them?
Well, I learned so much about pacing when I spent a day with the Olympic middle distance runner, Ajay Wilson. And I love her pacing philosophy. It's something that she calls rigid flexibility. So obviously, like she has these very important, like these kind of non-negotiable things that she wants to accomplish each day. Like that's the rigid part of it. So like every day she does a pretty intense, like 2.5 hour practice session, like all different lengths of runs, taking these little micro breaks in between, but really, really intense. But then what she does after that, and this is where the flexibility element comes in, I kind of asked her, well, what do you do at the end of your long practice every day? Like, do you have a hobby? Do you go out with friends? Like, what do you do? And she's like, this might sound kind of boring, but to be honest with you, I crash out. I will often take a really long afternoon nap. And maybe we don't all need like that 2-3 hour nap, but I think what was really striking to me is she was taking the amount of rest that was sort of commensurate with, or that matched the intensive effort that she put in. And so you had this rigidity, like you do have to do this thing, that this is a non-negotiable, that this practice, but you are putting way more padding and way more flexibility around that, and way more recovery than most of us typically do. And I think that we can also adopt this approach at work. Like obviously not all of us are world level, Olympic level athletes, but let's say you have a work project that you absolutely have to get done this week. Like that's the non-negotiable thing. And so sure, like you commit to putting in some time on it each day, but you give yourself a big cushion. Like you give yourself a lot of recovery time between work blocks. And when you're not working, you do something that's as completely unrelated to what you're doing at your desk as you can, because, just scrolling your phone in between times, that's not going to cut it. That's not going to restore you. That's not going to give you any energy. Like actually get out into the world, like meet a friend, do something in meat space, I guess, some video game players call it. But yeah, so I think that this rigid flexibility is something that, as I observed Ajay, I was determined to create my own version of that. And I think she learned that too through tough experience. Like world level athletes, many of them anyway, have this tendency to go above and beyond. They want to push, push, push. They want to do more. But for her, she found that when she pushed too hard and when she didn't give herself enough time for recovery, she would come up with like an overuse injury at the very worst minute, like right before the biggest competition of the year. So I think as an athlete, you sort of learn these things in a very visceral way. And that's a very memorable lesson. But, those of us who aren't athletes, maybe sometimes it takes us a little bit longer to learn that, because we can keep going through the motions of our day for a long time, even though we are still crashing out inside.
I think that's well said. It takes us a while to learn that. I think about my sweet mother, and whenever I got really cranky about something disproportionately, and this was this is well through my teenage years, she would ask me if I was hungry. And in a way, I kind of didn't like it. I was like, I'm not hungry. I'm mad about this thing. It's like, yeah, I understand that. But also, when's the last time you ate? It's like, I don't know, maybe like 9 hours ago. It's like, okay, well, how about we have a little break and eat something? And so I'm like a 17-year-old here.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm almost a man. And yeah, I was slow to learn that. And likewise, I think I was slow to learn even as a young adult in the workplace. It's like, I find that I am substantially grouchier and less enthusiastic about all the, quote, boring, quote, BS I have to deal with if I'm properly rested. If I have enough sleep, I am able to appreciate, well, you know what, there's something kind of interesting about this task. It's like, and it makes some sense that I'm being asked to do this, even though if it's not quite how I would do it, I kind of hear where they're coming from. I was just much more understanding and cheerful and interested. And for me, again, it's also subtle. It's like, what's enough? The difference between 5.6 hours of sleep and 6.8 hours of sleep doesn't seem all that substantial. Maybe an episode or two of Netflix at night. And yet for me, I found that really will show up.
Yeah. Yeah. Like one thing that really was driven home to me so many times in researching this book is like, there are certain physical states that are like not conducive to clear thinking or reasonable thinking at all. And so, yeah, getting not enough sleep might be one of those things. But just like if your nervous system is in a super activated state, you're going to be having all these squirrely thoughts all the time. Oh, I screwed this up. I screwed that up. Like, I think we tend to believe everything our brains are telling us, like take that as a gospel truth. But what I have learned, I think, through direct experience as somebody who tends to get spun up in this particular way is that when you get your body into a more settled state, your mind actually will follow. And sometimes it's hard to remember that at the precise moments when you're feeling the most spun up. But that said, it is absolutely true. And if you just sort of persist, and there are sort of spin down practices that work better for different people. Like I'm pretty much a terrible meditator. Like I do not have that kind of focus. And so I do deeper breathing, like a specific breathing tactic that a psychiatrist taught me called modulation breathing. But yeah, for you, it might be meditation. It might be like walking meditation. You take a walk outdoors. But the point is, whatever it is for you that gives you that feeling that, okay, I'm starting to spin down and let's give a more objective reading on this situation. Like, what is really true here? And you're going to be much more likely to like come to terms with what's happening. It might not be great, but like you're just coming to terms with what's happening. And then what can I realistically do about it? And it is really, really hard to do that sort of essential assessment process if you are in that monkey mind, squirrely state. So I would say like the first thing, tend to the physical spin up before you try to get into the deeper thought and make the next best decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is shocking how much that state, the emotional weather or vibe and the internal weather going on there has a profound impact on our decision making And we're often unaware of it. I mean, I think we know if I'm enraged and I want to fire that person, maybe now's not the time. I should probably think about that, before I just lash out.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a smart move. So I think we're aware of that. But I think in the subtler shades of emotion are also coloring our decision making, what we think is true versus false, or a wise move or an unwise move. And I think for many of us, it can pass right by our awareness, and we don't even know how much that's influencing us. That's just a theory, hypothesis, my own experience. Has your research revealed some of these things?
Yes, I was just thinking that is exactly right. And so I've come to see these spin down tactics, whether it's the breathing or whatever gets you into that more centered state. Like, it's not just a good short term pacing tactic that allows you to get through the day. It's a good long-term pacing tactic, because once you're in that more centered state, you are going to make decisions that serve your present and future self long-term.
Absolutely. And I think that we can forget about all kinds of little things in the oops, I haven't had any water or beverage for 6 hours. Oopsie. And I'm a little thirsty, but that's probably not causing me to be super irritable. Well, maybe very well is, So the squirrely state, that's a good turn of a phrase. What are some of perhaps the subtle yet reliable signs we should be on the lookout for? Maybe I'm in the squirrely state and it would be better to do some of the spin down stuff.
For me, what it is I won't have any trouble getting to sleep at night, but I will just bolt upright in bed at 4:30 a.m. and my heart will be pounding to beat the band. And after that happens, as you can imagine, it's really, really difficult for me to get back to sleep at all after that. And I'm just spun up. And I remember talking to a psychologist about how this happens to me. And he's like, yeah, this is what happens. If you are in a more chronic or a more elevated stress state, that burst of cortisol that normally would just wake you up more gently, it's going to pile on top of all this cortisol you've already got going. And it is going to give you a jolt like you wouldn't believe. And you're going to have this fear signal. It's you're not afraid of anything in particular, but it's you don't even know where this fear signal is coming from. You just sit up and you feel terrified. And so for me, that is a major red flag. That is a warning sign. But for you, it might be something a little bit different. It's when you start skipping meals or forgetting to drink or just not feeling hungry or thirsty. That is often a sign that your system, for whatever reason, it's trying to deal with whatever crisis it perceives as right in front of you or on the horizon, instead of just tending to the boring daily things that you have to do to get yourself through the day. So when you notice those signs, and if you're listening, you probably have some idea what these signs might be for you, that is really a warning. I need to pause here. I need to maybe do a little bit more spinning down. And then I need to ask myself, okay, what's the next wise choice? What do I need in this moment? And how can I fulfill that need? And it might be something super mundane. It might be just taking your water cup and just sticking it under the tap and making sure you get a couple swallows of water in your mouth. But I think a lot of us are not alert to those earlier warning signs until it's kind of too late and we get into a full-fledged bout of depression, full-fledged burnout. And that is just really, really dangerous territory. There was one study that really shocked me when I came across it. And it was about 200 people, and they were diagnosed with exhaustion, which is basically a burnout state. And they received initial treatment for that. But then they followed those people up for several years after the initial exhaustion. And they found that fully a third of them still qualified as exhausted, as basically burned out. And so the fact is, once we sort of crash, we can kind of limp along in this languishing, in this burned out state for for years on end. Like you kind of think it's going to go away once it happens. Well, if you don't tend to it, if you don't make real steps to like refill your tank, it is going to persist. And I think a lot of us don't like to admit that to ourselves, but it's true.
Well, so when it comes to refilling the tank, I think folks are perhaps quick to dismiss that, like, okay, yeah, I know that's good, and maybe I'll do that later after this project, after this move, after whatever. And so, do you have any pro tip, research-backed suggestions for science suggests that this is a super rejuvenating, spitting down move per minute required of your life?
Well, I mean, of course, if you can take a longer break from work, that is a great thing to do. But that said, I know a lot of us are in a position where that is just not available to us. Like maybe we just started working at a particular company. We're not quite senior yet, and we don't feel like we can make a request to like take a month off, right? And in those situations, what has been really helpful, I think, for me is a practice that I call energy management. And I've talked with a number of athletes too who use this. And as far as the biggest bang for your moment of effort, it's hard to beat. And it's very simple to start. Like what you do is you identify which times of day that you naturally tend to be most alert or most focused. So for some people, like for me, it's around mid-morning, anywhere from like 10 until 12:30 or whenever I break for lunch. But for other people, it might be afternoon, or for some creative types, sometimes it's like late at night. And then what you do is you plan your most mentally demanding, like work that matters the most that day to coincide with those natural energy peaks. And so all it is about aligning your toughest efforts with the moments when they're naturally going to feel the least effortful. So it's like your body is going to kind of give you these waves. Like if you think about a surfer, the surfer waits for the wave before they try to ride it. And so you are riding your energy peaks as you know they tend to come up. And then after lunch, like a lot of us have a huge energy slump, and that is totally normal. It's to do with digestion and a bunch of other things. And so if you can't take a full traditional siesta style break at that time, you can still sort of downshift by doing something that's a lot less demanding.
All right. Yes. So identify those moments. And I think for me, what's more obvious is the moment I am the opposite of super alert.
Mm-hmm.
And it is almost exactly 1:45 p.m. Central Time.
Yep.
Regardless of how much I slept, what time I woke up, whether I had a delicious latte, even shortly before that, or whether I ate a lot, whether I ate a little, no matter what, right around then is like, oh, I am sleepy. And it's just great to know. And I actually try to get at least 10 minutes of straight up literally in a bed during that zone, because it just feels so right in terms of it's lined up. Having a power nap would be great generally, and this is the ideal time I might do that. So I pull that off most days.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I would say, yeah, if you can get away with doing that, taking that 10-minute nap under your desk or whatever you need to do it, because that is going to give you a boost like you wouldn't believe. And it can even help ease you into your next energy peak. Like for me, I tend to have not the highest energy peak, but like a smaller one starting around 4:30 in the afternoon. It's funny. And sometimes I have like a little shot of espresso just to like kick this off a little bit more. But at that time, I know I can go writing, I can go deep into the creative stuff for about an hour before the hangry starts to sort of get the best of me. And I'm like, okay, I think that this is a good time to break now. So look for those smaller peaks too, in addition to those, to the lulls and the bigger peaks.
Very good. Okay. Well, and we had Dr. Michael Bruce on the show talking about, he's a sleep doctor. I'm talking about your chronotype. You know, you may naturally be an early morning person or a late night person. And his suggestion is, to the extent that's possible, try not to fight it and see if your family workplace can accommodate you as much as you can, because it can be pretty tough being a night owl in an early bird's world.
Yeah, exactly. And, if you're doing shift work and things like that, it's just very, very difficult. It's basically asking you to find a peak at a time when you normally would not find that. And the research shows that if you're trying to do that, maybe like for a month, you can get through it. But if it's like years on end like that, where you're forcing yourself past your natural chronotype, you are going to have more chronic disease burden. The health issues that are associated with that are just going to build up. And so, yeah, as much as possible, ride those natural energy waves, catch them when they happen, and don't beat yourself up when they're not there, because everybody is going to have sort of those fallow periods, those lie flat periods in their day.
You got a fun term of a phrase, a ludic loop. What is that?
Yeah, so this is something that actually happens to us, a lot of us anyway, when we get into this trance of scrolling our feeds or clicking for the next notification online. And the term ludic loop, it actually came from some research that an anthropologist did. And what she was studying was actually slot machine gamblers. So these people who were sitting in front of their machines, like over and over in this trance, just like pushing the lever over and over again. And then what some other research shows is that when you are doing these repetitive things, you are often getting a little bit of a dopamine burst associated with that. And it's not just from doing the thing itself, it's from the anticipation of what's coming next. So you might be getting a dopamine burst when you click on your notifications, and that's because you're anticipating, I'm going to get a new message, like somebody's going to like my post or whatever it is. And that's okay, like as far as it goes, but it just tends to draw us into these endless loops of consumption. Like we get the dopamine burst, and that kind of motivates us to keep scrolling until we get the next dopamine burst and the next and the next. And so it's kind of a very shallow engagement. What happens, just like at the slot machine, people get up from the seats after 5 hours and are like, what just happened to the last 5 hours of my life? I think a lot of us have had that experience, whether we're scrolling Instagram, scrolling TikTok, like what just happened to that last 45 minutes? Like what kind of went down the hole there that I'm never going to get back?
Yeah, and I always wonder, how can I use that for good? It doesn't seem to happen to me when I'm folding laundry or processing email, unfortunately.
I mean, if you're familiar with the flow state, deep creative engagement, I think of the online scrolling as a sort of shallow flow because it's like a passive flow where you're not engaging, you're not making any progress, you're really not contributing. And so what I tell people is if you're going to try and swap out some of that sort of shallow flow, that shallow scrolling time, find something that you know helps you get into a deeper flow. So if you're a writer like me, it might be working on your latest story. If you play an instrument, even just getting into practice, a lot of people get into this deep flow. And the great thing about flow is it's, again, a state that makes you feel like you're hanging onto a tow rope and you're getting pulled along. Like you are enjoying the process so much that it's easier to keep going than it is to bail out. So yeah, like replacing that shallow flow with deeper flow, that's going to be the best thing because then you're not going to feel like you're at loose ends. Like, oh, well, now I'm not scrolling. What am I going to do instead? Once you're in that flow, that question is going to be answered for you. You're going to be so engaged that you're just going to want to keep going.
That's cool. All right. Well, Elizabeth, tell us, what are some of your favorite tactics that are just fantastic for this?
One thing that has been really fun and really freeing for me is practicing selective mediocrity. And I first heard Whitney Casares, she's a doctor, she's on Instagram, she was talking about this. And so basically what selective mediocrity is you are choosing, you're deciding like, I'm going to do all these different things in my day and I'm just going to do an adequate job at them. Like I'm going to be just okay. Like I'm going to send the one-line email if it answers the questions in this 5-paragraph thing that somebody sent to me. I'm going to blitz through this project evaluation if I'm pretty sure that my manager is just going to skim it for 5 seconds and then put it in the pile on his desk, right? And so it's about giving yourself permission to streamline in that way, to do just enough, like just good enough, but don't do more than good enough. This is what one psychiatrist told me, like he tells his clients, like, don't do more than good enough unless you're just totally passionate about the thing that you're doing. And when you do that streamlining, then you're going to have more energy to put into the things that matter the most to you, that you really absolutely care the most about doing your best at.
Can you give us some top examples of these are great candidates for being selectively mediocre at?
At work, it's just kind of, there's so much busy work that so many of us have to do, whether it's like a survey, a progress report. And I'm not saying like blow it off entirely, but it really is okay to like set the timer for 5 minutes and just make a goal. Like I'm going to get through this in 5 minutes. And if I'm done, I'm just going to be done and I'm going to turn this in. I'm not going to obsess over it for 20 minutes or half an hour. Not that I have ever done this kind of thing in my life, but just like that kind of stuff, that kind of cruft that accumulates in the corners of like your work life, your everyday life, that is the kind of stuff that just be selectively mediocre and embrace that. And it's just so freeing, and it gives you a feeling of power, I think, too.
Yeah, that's very nice piece to highlight there, because I would say busy work. I mean, whenever there is a process in which you suspect your input is not all that mission critical, I think is a great place to be selectively mediocre. Like sometimes, this is me, I love human development.
Me too.
And learning and growth and improvement, right? Yeah. And so if I get a survey, it's like, oh, you know what? I would relish the opportunity to serve you by sharing with you as much insightful, actionable feedback as possible.
Absolutely.
So let me really just, I've done this before. I have gone deep.
Oh my gosh.
And then it's just, you wonder like, will anyone ever actually read and ponder this? Or is it just sort of like, yeah, it's on the checklist to send out the survey?
Right. And to be honest with you, like a human may not even be reading that. It's probably going to get scanned through Chat GPT or whatever. So why do we do this to ourselves? Yeah.
Well, tell me, Elizabeth, any final do's and don'ts here with regard to pacing?
One of the things that I always sort of stress to people is pacing. It's not just like a one-time thing, like, okay, here's my pacing plan. Here's what I'm going to do this week. Here's what I'm going to do this month. Let's have Chat GPT optimize that for me. It's a lot more fluid than that. It's sort of a process of ongoing noticing what's going on and being responsive to that, like checking in maybe more often with yourself than most of us typically do. Like, where am I now? Where I'm actually headed? What direction am I heading in? And what adjustments or what pace changes can I make that are going to be most likely to get me there? And even that finish line, don't be surprised if that starts to evolve as well. Like you might have a certain goal right now, and for you in this moment, that's a really meaningful finish line and what you're pacing yourself toward. But as you get more knowledge, as you get more experience, that may change, that may evolve in ways that are sort of a happy surprise to you. So I think just sort of being open to that and just knowing that fluidity and flexibility are really at the core of what it means to pace yourself in a smart way.
Big thanks to Elizabeth for sharing her wisdom with us. And big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsor to check out is Scribe. When your team is trying to become more awesome at their job, unclear processes can create enormous friction. We all want to do great work, but poor documentation, lacking knowledge transfer, and mixed messages mean teams are totally in the dark on how things actually get done. Scribe is a workflow AI platform that captures any workflow in real time and turns it into step-by-step documentation automatically. That's right, you don't have to do anything. No manual writing, no screen sharing videos, nothing. So cool. Scribe is trusted by over 80,000 enterprises, including nearly half of the Fortune 500. I've spent literally hours pulling together checklists and screen shares to communicate processes, but with Scribe, I just turn on the extension and it captures every click, step, and screenshot automatically to build a complete guide as I go. It also automatically redacts sensitive information, provides real-time step-by-step guidance inside the actual tool, and even suggests ways to improve the workflow itself. Building an awesome team starts with making sure everyone knows how to do the work, and Scribe makes that effortless. Book a personalized enterprise demo by visiting scribe.how/awesome. That's scribe.how/awesome. One sponsor to check out is Shopify. When you're starting something new, what ifs abound. What if I fail? What if nobody cares? What if nobody buys my stuff? Shopify can help make things easy. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., from household names like Magic Spoon and Allbirds to brands just getting started. Shopify facilitates everything from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to use a dozen different software tools. Everything's all in one place, making your life easier and your operations smoother. And what if you get stuck? Well, Shopify is always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support. You can get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. It's time to turn those what-ifs into ka-ching with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/awesomepod. Go to shopify.com/awesomepod. That's shopify.com/awesomepod. Ka-ching. All right. Well, now could you share with us a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
Yeah, so I don't know if you're familiar with Father Greg Boyle, who founded the Homeboy Industries. It's like a gang rehabilitation program in LA. And he says, systems change when people change. They're bite-sized moments to be able to reflect back to people the truth of who they are. Then you watch them become that truth, and they extend that truth to other people. And so that resonates so much for me, because part of what I outline as a good pacing strategy is becoming skilled at finding those bite-sized moments to remind people of what you see in them, the potential that you see in them, and where they're headed. In the book, I call them brief candle moments, and creating those is so fulfilling if you're the initiator or if you're the recipient. And it may not be a long time. It may be like 2 or 3 minutes, but you learn something in those moments that you look back 30 years down the line and you're like, if I hadn't heard that in this moment, my life might look very different than it does right now. So just those trajectory shifting moments that you can create for other people, like that is going to be enormously fulfilling to you. And that is certainly something that I try to put into play as part of a longer term pacing strategy.
Yeah. Boy, I remember that's resonating. Back in episode 14 with Dr. Marsha Reynolds, she made me cry when she told a story when she turned 20 in jail.
Wow.
And someone there just said to her, you have no idea who you are, and talked about how she was so smart and courageous, and she had all these opportunities and advantages and strengths and things she could do.
Mm-hmm.
And she just felt really seen, and bam, it really was transformational, sharing that piece in that moment.
That is incredible. And yet people often do get emotional when they recall these moments. And so I was a volunteer in a mentoring program one time, and I knew this guy named Tom. And Tom was like a retired guy in his 60s, but he was the best person that I know at offering these moments to other people. So the kids in this program, they were sort of in this category that at the time was called youth at risk. Maybe some of them had been in trouble with the law. They were having trouble at school. They were just struggling in different ways. And Tom, he just had this way of offering these brief candles, of really conveying to somebody in this capsule that packed a punch of like what he saw in them, the potential that he saw, all the things that he loved about who they were. And I just watched it transform them. And I'm getting emotional thinking about it, because if we could all be a little bit more like Tom, I think the world would be a much better place.
This also reminds me of The Lion King. And no spoilers, anybody. It's been out for a while. But, when Simba sees his dad in the stars, remember who you are. I mean, whoosh.
Oh, man.
That's powerful stuff. It's powerful stuff.
Yeah. And like, people don't realize you can really give this to somebody, and it's like this infinite thing that you're giving them. and it's going to take 2 minutes of your time. And I think if that came home to more of us, we would all be looking for these opportunities on a daily or like an hourly basis, because that's the impact that they can have.
Mm-hmm. My favorite habit.
It's a practice that's in the research. It's called resonance frequency breathing, but I've come to call it modulation. And so what it involves is actually breathing at a pace in which there's the greatest variability between the way your heart rate speeds up as you breathe in and then slows down as you breathe out. If you're a fitness gadget person, you might have heard about heart rate variability. And so breathing at this pace, which for most people is about 5 breaths a minute, that is going to get your heart rate variability in the highest possible place. And that is going to facilitate you getting into that calmer state faster. And I had a really crazy experience when I first tried this type of breathing. It was in the office of a psychiatrist, Joe Arpaia, who teaches modulation to his patients. And so what he did, like he clipped a little heart rate monitor on my finger, and he had me do my modulation breathing. For me, it was like 5.2 breaths per minute. Do that for about 5 minutes. And I was watching, like on his laptop screen, there was like a little tracing, and where my heart tracing started out like real jaggedy and unpredictable, they were just slowly relaxing into these smooth, these more like S-shaped sine waves, showing that my heart rate variability was improving. And at the end of those 5 minutes, Dr. Joe, he turned to me and he was like, you know what? You just calmed yourself down way faster than if I had taken an IV sedative and I pushed it into your arm right now. And that really struck me, because I had gone into that day pretty skeptical. I mean, we all hear about like different breathing practices and we try different things that we read about in magazines, and maybe it doesn't really work for us. But for me, sustaining that about 5.2 breaths per minute you got to stick with it for more than 30 seconds. It's got to be like 3, 4, 5 minutes, but you can do it alongside everything else in your life. Like I do it all the time when I'm waiting at red lights or when I'm chopping up the food for dinner. Like it kind of weaves around just the daily practices that you're already doing. And so I can attest that this really does work, and it really is better than taking sedatives and hoping for the best.
No, that's awesome stuff. Yes. And there are apps, even the Calm app on the free before you subscribe will give you 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, which approximates that.
Yeah.
Or as well as Elite HRV with a heart rate strap will give you that kind of a visual experience if you're into it. So that's real. That's my experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I love Elite HRV too. Yeah.
And a favorite book?
I'm kind of obsessed with An Interrupted Life by Eddie Hillesum. Now, not a lot of people have heard of this, but basically what it is, it's a collection of diaries and letters that were written by a Dutch Jewish woman during World War II. And over the course of these diaries and these letters, you see very clearly how she evolved over time from somebody who was pretty anxious, very self-focused, like always getting spun up, as we've been calling it. And she really evolved into somebody who was so dedicated to service. And it's sort of, I mean, I feel like I'm nowhere near being there yet, but it gives me hope that all of us might be able to evolve, at least in that direction, no matter what craziness is happening around us.
And if folks want to learn more, get in touch, where'd you point them?
I have been spending a fair amount of time on Instagram these days. My username is Svobodster. So that's SVOBODSTER. It was a nickname given to me in 5th grade by my best frenemy. So there you have it. You can you can find me at my website, elizabethsvoboda.com. And I do have a Beehive newsletter as well called The Art of Pacing.
All right. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
If you find yourself during the day in mental overload or just in the midst of a crisis that really caught you off guard, first, just take a few minutes to do your spin down. And then once you reach that state where you're feeling a little bit calmer, ask yourself, what's the wise choice here?
All right. Elizabeth, thank you.
Thank you so much, Pete. It's been a blast.
I really love Elizabeth's take on selective mediocrity, which is a fun turn of phrase. And more importantly, it really zeroes in on a tendency I have, and perhaps you have, a person who seeks to be awesome at your job, in which we have high standards for just about everything that we do. And that can result in some stress, some anxiety, some not so good vibes and feels. And I have found indeed when I proactively, explicitly, even say out loud or write down, I am choosing to have a low standard. I will be selectively mediocre in this regard. What success means for today is merely this small thing. What success means for this task is this. What success means for cleaning up is just clearing this rectangular zone of junk so that that zone is more usable and beautiful for the time being. Great stuff from Elizabeth. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, I recommend you mosey on over to awesomeatyourjob.com/EP1164. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.